Probably
Hi, welcome to our listeners. Um, Jessica, what is clearly something's on your spirit?
something's on my spirit. I did some research because I kept thinking to myself, Tanya must be so close to a Virgo because of your birth date. And I was
Yes.
like, what is the actual cusp considered? And
Uh-huh.
then
I know.
the
I know the
facts
answer.
came out that you are actually smack dab in the middle of Leo Virgo cusp. Like
What's the
you are
point?
formally a cusp, although you only rep Leo. You are just as much
No, I
Virgo
have no
as you are.
interest in I have no interest in talking about being a Virgo. That's like because I am to my core, you are a Virgo, Jessica,
Hmm.
right? We are as opposite as one could be in a very good way. We're both
Yeah.
fabulous. But, I think that I'm my Leo energy is strong. That
So
lion
the
is just doing
okay.
it all.
So the facts of the matter are not in this case. Are not facts.
I don't know what the fact I don't
I'm
know
just
what you
saying you're a
mean by
cusp.
that.
I'm not saying whether where your energy lies. I'm just saying technically you are a cusp.
I think Virgo start on the
19th through the
23rd,
23rd. 19th through the 22nd, excuse me. And your birthday is which day?
the 21st.
Okay. Just saying. By numbers,
Well,
it's. But
listen, I'm
anyway,
not sure this is relevant,
we're
but
approaching Virgo season, everybody. We're still in Leo, I know,
we are
but
so not talking about Virgo season
it's
yet.
coming
I mean,
soon enough.
it
Soon
is
enough.
coming. I will acknowledge you as a Virgo, and maybe I'll listen. I'm meeting with our favorite tarot card reader, favorite
Mm,
healer tomorrow
okay.
to
Ask
figure
her.
out how my season and how I should be moving. And
Okay.
so I will mention this whole Virgo theory to her and
Cool.
see if she has
Thank you.
anything to say.
All right.
But we also have another sign with us.
Yes, we do. Oh, wait. I have one more thing before we introduce her
Yes.
that I didn't bring up last time, or that I actually just realized. So this week we're honoring the Montgomery Brawl anniversary, and
The
and
chair, the chair
what
summit.
I didn't realize, because we just talked about my trip to Alabama and the legacy sites, is that where it actually happened is at the legacy site boat launch. So that's the boat
Oh,
launch where when you go from the museum to the legacy site on a boat, that's where this whole situation happened. So
you were
the
there.
besides that, JCL was like, you actually couldn't have got to Black people in a more empowered moment than when they came out of the Legacy Museum on the way on a boat ride, two more sculptures, and then this happened. So it makes
And they
more
were like,
sense for the
no,
hat.
not. They were like, not today, Satan. They were like,
Exactly.
not today. We are going to
Exactly.
we are not going to this is not 1960. Come through.
For
Let's go.
for the ancestors. So that was the other thing I wanted to point out when I
There
saw the
was one,
location.
I feel like there was one other thing we missed to talk about, and I don't know. I mean, it's not Beyonce's new song with Jay. It's not. It wasn't the remix, but it was
Which I
something else.
haven't listened to, by the way, which would shock
What is
you.
going on with you? You didn't
I don't
listen
know.
to it. There's
I haven't listened
first
yet.
she did the morning. Was it called Morning Dew? And
I
then she
know.
did a remix. The remix came out like I think Monday.
I haven't listened to either. I will. I
Maybe it's
will.
slipping. Maybe you're not.
It's slipping. The
Your
card is in.
devotion. It's not.
God, okay. I got to get into it.
Yes.
Um, oh,
Speaking of, we have a
speaking
guest.
of, yes. Oh,
We
I thought
have.
you were going to say, speaking of Virgo, now you
We
were
want
going
to make
back to
sure she
Beyonce.
gets in on this
Yes.
conversation.
We have a guest today, and I think we teased this guest a while ago. So, yes, we have a guest today we're so excited about, who is a friend of mine for, I hate to say this out loud, but I guess probably 20 years and yeah, 20 years. And this Tamika and I met in back in the early days of I guess we worked in public television together, which we could actually, she's an author and she's a former journalist. We should actually though write a book about working in public television, particularly in the 80s, 90s and 2000s, because
Yes.
what a ride.
Yes.
What a
Yes.
ride. But Tamika Thompson, who's here today, she is an award-winning author, like I said. She's worked in journalism. She's a Bay Area, coming to us from the Bay Area. So we apologize for our continued California bias, but she come by way of Detroit and other parts of the country. Tamika, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so
And
much for having me. I've been excited about this for the longest
Yes.
time. I'm so glad we're here in this space together now.
yay, hooray. Anything you, so I think the first thing, I just recently saw you on a book tour for your most recent book, The Curse of Hester Gardens, which most people know on this podcast because I think I've talked about it. I'm a scaredy cat, and so I don't usually watch or read anything. And my husband went with me to the reading, and he was like a chapter, he's like, I'll read it first. And he was like a chapter in, and he looked at me and he goes, yeah, this one's not for you. And I was like, okay. If you're saying that, like I'm hearing you. But do you just want to, before we jump in, talk at all about kind of that journey you've been on this newest book and, tales from the road and your book tour? I'm sure you're exhausted.
I'm exhausted, but in a good way. It's like after you have a baby where you are tired, you're sleep deprived, but you're so happy that you have the baby
Mm.
and you just love it. That's what it's like because I'd been working on this book for so long, 2 years of research, 5 years of writing it before I got the book deal. And then we spent another year developing it to get it out into the world. It came out in March, and I immediately went on tour all over the country. And then once I finished the book tour stops, the last one was the one where you saw me in LA. It started, we went right into con season. So like StokerCon, the Nebulas. And so I started traveling for that. I was just in Atlanta this past weekend. Yeah, this past weekend for the National Book Club Conference. So it's been amazing. I had done a short story collection before. I had a lot of short stories out. I had co-edited an anthology before, but there's nothing like having that debut novel, and I'm
Yeah.
just relieved to have it out in the world now.
I'm
Congratulations.
Thank you.
unlike Jessica, I am like a horror lover. I the more the scarier the better for me, and the darker the better. I think one of the funny things we talked about was that there is a little bit of psychology associated with those who love horror, maybe, and even how we deal with storytelling and how we connect to it. And I'd love to hear like what you're thinking about that is.
So, from a very young age, I had a strong oral storytelling like group within my family. And it just so happened that my grandmother and my mother told a lot of stories. It was like a strong oral tradition.
Mm,
And I read a lot to my kids. They didn't read a lot to me. They would tell me stories at bedtime.
mm,
And that was the way that I sort of understood the world when I was young, was through story, because they would tell everything as a story. And I think we all kind of do this to a certain degree, but like my mother would come home from the day and I could hear her telling my grandmother or my father about her day, but she told it like as these really amazing stories. Where she's like setting the scene, like, and first of all, I already went in and I was in a bad mood, the day already started, like she's like setting the scene. And my grandmother was the same way. And I think from a very young age, I just was drawn to stories and storytelling, but
mm.
specifically horror, because they also told me horror stories as bedtime stories. And
Okay, now
so
that's interesting.
yeah, well, I think it grew out of my family's tradition of trying to deal with the horrors and the terrors of being in
Yeah.
the South, which is where my
Mm,
grandmother was from. She was from Georgia. My father was from Southern Alabama, and in the perils like in our neighborhood. And
yeah.
so a lot of times the stories would involve like a monster or an intruder, or would make me think about my plan if certain things happen, because we didn't have the protection in our neighborhood of calling the police.
Mm,
Couldn't call the police for anything.
mm.
So we had to always know like kind of where the exits are, and what weapon we would use and who we would call if something happened. And so
Okay.
a
Listen.
way to kind of like introduce me to, I think, some of these scary concepts was to couch it in these horror stories.
You
It's
know,
So
it's
so
it's
kind of
kind of
interesting.
it's a safer way to
yeah.
deal with the trauma, you know?
It's
Yeah.
interesting because as a Jamaican, as a child, Caribbeans think a lot about sort of ghosts, obia, the tradition. And I think as I was a child, I remember my family was very much talking about things that they saw in traditions. And it may have also been centered around what we would consider ghost stories.
Yes. Yes. And you know, in my family tradition, particularly my family in the South, the ancestors were very present. And it wasn't unusual for them to talk to someone who had passed away as if they were still in the house or to reference them as if they were still present. And so if someone had passed away and a door slammed or
Right.
a floorboard creaked down the hall, they, oh, that's Lester.
Mhm.
Here he's letting us know that he
Not there's
came.
Lester.
Right. He came to see the new baby. He wants to see his grandchild or something like that.
Right.
It was definitely like a positive thing. Like
Right.
they are still present. They are still here with us.
Yeah.
And it wasn't necessarily something to be afraid of. And so I grew up with this idea that the past is always there and that
Yeah.
the people that we lost are present. I remember very specifically when my grandmother passed away and I was very close to her. The adults were sitting around talking about her funeral and someone made a suggestion that was just kind of silly. No one was going to go for it, but the door slammed at that moment. And they were like, see, Jesse
She's
didn't
here.
like that.
Mhm.
Jesse's
You know what?
letting you know that was a bad idea. And it was the wind blowing, of course, but it was a
You
way that
never know.
you never know, right? It was a way that they like kept her alive. And
I
so
love
I think that horror is a part of our everyday life. I think we process a lot of our grief and our fear through
it.
these tales.
It's funny. I think maybe his last episode, Tanya, we were talking about, or maybe it was just a phone call we had, but I was saying that my therapist was talking about CBT therapy for Black women because storytelling comes so natural to us. So walking it through in story
Mm.
doesn't always help you process it because we're just so used to doing that. And then I think we've also talked on the episode about in the medical profession where often doctors also try to, with Black women in particular, understand facts and pull away from. That's why they should be asking you, like, how do you feel in pain on a 1 to 10 instead of explain to me what you're feeling? Because we are just a people who are rooted in telling the story.
I think for therapy too, I have often been directed to journal. And so I think that there is something to that. I think it probably is not the best medium for me because I'm also a writer. But I think for Black women, I think to your point about us having this oral tradition and telling story, that maybe something about the physical nature of writing it down, which is a different process than I think telling it, can get to some of that. But I feel like I wouldn't survive without my regular therapy and
No,
just sitting in
no,
there and
definitely
just
not. No,
telling
yeah.
her everything.
And it
And
wasn't like
therapy in
in
many
lieu of,
different ways, right? And
right,
therapy in many different ways, because I think it could be obviously calling someone and making sure you have that weekly session, but it can also be the community and people in your life and those who are just, the girl call me moment. Like,
right,
or
right.
definitely our therapist. Jessica
Yeah,
might be my therapist
right.
occasionally.
Yeah. And I don't want to suggest it was like, do not do it, but it was just like, so like somatic. It was talking about like being able to feel it in your body is something and like connecting to it is a lot more challenging for some. And I can speak
Yeah.
for myself, for me, than like talking it out and even writing it out. And so this idea of like different and EMDR of like the processing piece, just adding that to a practice instead of just the talk therapy. But because yeah, I think for a lot of us that just comes natural to. I love your I love your story of your mom like setting the stage of like this is not going to be enough for me to just tell you my day. Like I'm gonna need you
No,
to know it all.
no, sit down. Sit down. This is theater now. Sit
Right.
down. Let me tell
Right.
you.
Right.
And I think the way that she told stories, it plays so much into my storytelling and the way that I tell stories now. And it came very naturally to me because I always set it up. I mean, and that's what you're taught to do when you go to learn to write. You have to open with the character's life before the inciting incident happens. And I think without even realizing, my mother was our children do it. If you ever listen to children and they tell their stories, they very much like set the scene, and then he came in, like they just kind of know how to get into this rhythm of telling. So I just think it's the way that we process everything in life.
Yeah, and you talked a little bit about this. I think so. You talked about familial roots in the South, which kind of informed some of those earliest kind of memories of storytelling. You then grew up in the Midwest in Detroit, and I think horror in particular, and I think comedy is probably similar as a way to process potentially dark things happening in life. And can you talk a little bit about kind of how you stumbled into horror that was rooted in some of your personal experiences?
So I had that early sort of process with my family because we lived in a high crime neighborhood, and I grew up in Detroit when crack was on the street, and there was just a lot of violence around me, and violence within my family. And I lost my uncle to gun violence. He was shot to death when I was very young, and my family was traumatized. This was my mother's older brother, and my family, I think, was just traumatized, and we were re-traumatized over and over again because of the environment that we were in. And when I became a teenager, I decided that I did not like living in the city anymore, and I wanted to move away. I survived a carjacking attempt when I was 15. So when I turned 18, I was like, I'm getting out of here. Like, I moved away, and that was it. I just wasn't going to be there anymore. But it traveled with me internally because you can't get away from who you are. You can't get away from your home. And so everything that I was studying when I was in school, particularly for political science, was making me better understand what had happened when I was growing up. And so I think I was already building the social underpinnings to my future horror work without even realizing it, because I was absorbing all of the information about comparative politics, about guns on the street, about violence and the ways that the West perpetuates violence and takes our violence to other parts of the world. I was filtering all of that through the lens of having grown up in Detroit. And so when I made the transition to become a reporter, all of the stuff that I was drawn to were things that had grown out of those early experiences. So I interviewed gang members. I talked to people who were incarcerated, talked to people who grew up in neighborhoods that were similar to mine. Never with an eye towards being a horror writer, always with journalism and research related to reporting in mind. But I was just always drawn to that. So when I actually started writing, everything was very dark and horrific, but had some sort of like social aspect to it that it was attempting to uncover. Every single story. And I started to find out about myself that I had never really let any of that go. I had not let the horror go from when I was young, and I had not let that neighborhood go. And it's no coincidence now that this first book has come out, and I'm hearing from incarcerated youth. I'm hearing from gang members that they are reading the work and they're connecting with the characters, which to me is like, I've just been carrying this, and now I put it out into the world. But it's important because I want them to know that I see them. I see them because I used to live next to them when I was growing up, and they were in my family. And so I feel like horror has allowed me to tell the stories that I was, to a certain extent, limited in telling using journalism.
And it's interesting because you've sort of used the writing and used this as a way to, one, connect with those who have experienced it. And now the question is, how have you now it's almost a healing process that you've gone through. And the question is like when you go to the next book, how does it evolve? Because I think you have another book coming out.
Yes.
How has it evolved or changed or shifted?
So I put all of my pain on the page. And I think that the writing itself is another form of therapy. You know, I do CBT, but I think it's another form of therapy for me to be able to process emotion, to process grief, trauma, pain, and also to have conversations around topics that I think we need to talk about and we need to face that people are not really willing to for whatever reason up until this point. So for the first book, it's gun violence. For the second book, I'm looking at anti-aging and specifically the ways that it impacts Black women and how Eurocentric beauty standards have impacted all of us, but specifically anti-aging. And it's interesting because I started working on this second book before The Substance came out. But The Substance has been such an opportunity because people are paying attention to it now and are talking about it more. And so, and it's still a horror book. So, you know, it's going to descend into chaos and there's just going to be all sorts of madness. But
Right.
the important thing for us to be talking about is the ways that we have put pressure on ourselves about aging, not just the physical part of it, and that there's more research that needs to be done about the physical part of aging, but the pressure that we put on ourselves about the way that we look as we age, which is a process that we cannot reverse. And so we have this industry out there that has marketed youth to us because it lines their pockets for us to constantly be trying to look younger when it's just not possible. And so we have a lot of women who look altered, but who
Right.
do not actually look younger.
Right. Right. Yeah, that's exactly right. I was traveling to another part of the country and I was like, I saw like these women and I was like, oh, this is what older white women look like. Because I feel like in California, it's not that they look younger, they just look completely different. Like they don't look like I don't even can't even put an age to it. It's like this is just different. It doesn't you don't look younger. But California I feel like there's an extra, you know, extra
There's
It's a,
emphasis.
it's a little, it's a Dallas too. I mean, I
Yeah,
think if you've ever
Dallas,
seen
right.
somebody in Dallas, you're like, it's interesting because the movie Substance with Debbie Moore.
Yeah. That's the one. That's the one that
Yeah.
I'm talking about because that's the one that sparked this whole. I was already building this book.
Yeah.
And
Jessica, have you
that
seen the movie? Do you know what we're talking? Okay.
so
All right.
I
good.
know what you're talking about because I've heard interviews on it, but I haven't seen it,
Yeah.
no.
Yeah. That one is such a, yeah. And when you think about, that was just such a dark and almost painful movie in so many ways as you watch that journey of that woman try. It was almost like it was so dark. And I think I remember sitting there going, why am I watching this? But it felt so true to life in
Yes.
what you see, not my life, but you see true to life of what you see on camera and what you see it's sold to you and how you will never it's almost like this cycle, it's definitely the hamster wheel versus the Ferris wheel, that it's a cycle and you're not going to ever get to a point in which you're going to be able to reverse it.
And we're starting to have the conversation because there is pushback on it now, where you do have some people who are saying in this country very vocally, I am not going to alter myself. I am not going to try to be a younger version of myself. I am going to embrace the aging process and all that entails, right down to the gray hair. And and I am going to find the beauty in it where other cultures see aging as something to be celebrated.
Yeah.
That I will take this individual stance to celebrate my aging and to see the changes as something to embrace and to be proud of, as opposed to something to alter and change. And I don't actually know why we would ever want to look like our 25-year-old self when we're older. I want to be healthy in my body at the age
Yeah.
that I am and to feel good about myself at the age that I am. But this is what a woman in midlife is supposed to look like. And
Yeah.
when I'm older, that version of me is what I'm supposed to look like at that age. I'm not supposed to look 25 my entire life.
I do think there is a cultural difference, though, when you're thinking about how we see aging and, well, how we age. And, the black don't crack, we say it. But, I think, though, I've seen a shift, though, most recently in what we used to celebrate and be on and feel great about now has been like, we need to conform to the norm and what everyone else is doing.
I
Right.
will say that the book, and I'm trying not to give too much away, but it does deal specifically with African American women in the ways that it impacts them. And Black Don't Crack comes up in there because there is a certain pressure and a certain acceptance of anti-aging, even with that phrase. The idea that Black Don't Crack fits squarely into the idea of youth culture and trying to look young, because we're saying that we look young beyond the years that our white counterparts do, right? And that there's this idea that somewhere between 35 and 75 you can't really tell a person's age, right, when they're Black. And what if you fall outside of that? And what does it mean for you when you are showing signs of aging? And is that Black Don't Crack? Is that something that is putting extra pressure on us? Is that something that we are trying to achieve? If we're wearing it as a badge of honor, what does it mean about the other parts of our aging, like our blood work and our physical health and our cholesterol and our plans for our estate and our will? What do all of these things mean? What does it mean to age when you're Black?
Oof. Wow, I feel like I need a tack.
There's a lot.
You're
There's a
just
lot of cracks in
preaching.
that. There's a lot of cracks in those estate plans. I'll tell you that part. We'll just leave it there.
Exactly.
That's the next episode.
I think that's really interesting. I think that also thinking about the Black American experience, it's so important, like you said, like both of you said, to point out the cultural context of it, of like, what does it mean to be Black in America and the standards that you are using versus Black, across the diaspora, and how that shows up differently. I think that I remember when we were in Kenya, we talked to a guy and we asked him, we didn't ask him how old he was. He said something and it brought up like when his birthday was or something like that. And he's like, I have no idea. I don't know when my birthday is. I don't know how old I am. Like, I'm an elder, which is what is important to people around me. But like, I have no reason to capture like those other details. And it was so profound to
That's
me. I'm
actually
like,
freeing. That's actually freeing. I might start that immediately.
immediately starting now.
I don't know. When someone says how old, I don't know. I'm here to support.
Age is a construct. Just right. If
Right.
it ever asks you for age on a form, just start putting age as a construct. It's not one that I can form to.
Thank you.
Your birthday would be hard though, because that would mean you'd have to like abandon being Leo/Virgo. But you don't have to. You don't have to use the year.
She went back to that. She brought
Call
that.
back.
Always, all roads lead back to her point. Anyway, let's
Just
focus.
saying. Just saying, we are releasing this in the middle of it. It is contextually important. Okay, well, since you talked on health, I'm going to take us to like a total left, because Tamika, Tamika was like the first woman I met who like asked me a question about like, what do I know about my reproductive system and how do I know how my ovaries are doing or something. And I was like, what? This woman is
Important question.
she is in touch with her body. And I think throughout life, that is very much how I think about Tamika. So when we started this call, we said, so, like, we had talked about perimenopause before, and this show we shorthand it for peri, and we always Perry's always making an appearance. And Tamika, do you want to just talk about, I mean, you don't need to talk about your whole reproductive kind of journey, but like what got you interested? Like, was this something that was like a familial, like your family talked about it? Was it something that you just got into because you were interested because no one talked about it? Kind of, where did you start?
There was no health, wellness talk at
Mm.
all in my family. There was no reproductive talk. Everything around my body was about shame. And I
Mm.
feel like so much of this happens, particularly with Black women, when it comes to sex, boyfriends, having babies, our exercise, what we eat, our body image, all of this stuff, there's shame. We are wrong. We are wrong for existing. We are wrong for everything. And those were the messages that I got, because those were the messages that the women in my family had gotten when they were young. So even when they talked to me about my period for the first time, it was very much like, so I'm going to tell you, and it's awful, and it's going to be miserable, and it's, just everything was so negative. So when I was out on my own in the world, I started to research and become a bit of a feminist around my body and my wellness and my health. And part of that was understanding my reproduction and the amazing things that my body is able to do, and the ways that we language it versus the way that we language things that are related to men. And so in the book that I was recommending to everyone, it was Taking Charge of Your Reproduction, I think was the name of it, right? Or
Okay.
Taking Charge of Your Fertility. That's what it was, Taking
Okay.
Charge of Your Fertility. And it was talking about the ways that we call fluid that leaves the woman's body as discharge. And we don't have this like negative connotation about seminal fluid for men, and about ovulation and understanding when you ovulate and understanding what it means for your body, your uterus, and what it is and how it can impact your life when you're young and also when you're older, not just as it relates to having children, but just your own health. I know so many women who have had hysterectomies because of fibroids and the way that fibroids, impacts your life. And so this was around the same time that I gave up meat. And I eventually gave up dairy and eggs and took on a plant-based lifestyle, which I've had my whole life, and began to exercise and to just, everything was about wellness and about me feeling good in my body. And it just went on that way through both of my, pregnancy, labor and delivery, all the way up until recently when Perry showed up and knocked on my door. And, and everything is still the same. I still eat plant-based. I walk on the trail somewhere between 16 and 20 miles a week, just trail
Okay,
walking.
Tamika, that's the next book. Because I might need, or maybe that's the blog. Because I need it. Because I need to, why are we giving up eggs? Why? I need the whole thing. I need to know. Help.
It's been it's been the best thing I've ever done for myself, I think. Just because I had all the things in my family, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, diabetes, all the things, right? And so I do yoga, I do Pilates, I walk. I put like a little like weight pack on to go rucking when I walk, just like an extra like 5 or 10 pounds, nothing heavy, right? And I eat. So I go for my blood work, which I do every year, never have any issue. In the last like week and a half, 2 weeks, I go in and I get my blood work, and they're like, you're right on the cusp of being pre-diabetic. And I was like,
You're like,
I don't understand
how
how
dare
this
you?
could even be possible. Like, what am I supposed to eat? Like, I literally cannot eat anything less than like, I eat salad. Not like, and I eat
Well, is
some,
that the problem? You
Even
just
when it's
haven't
bad.
you haven't eaten in 3 months because we can't.
we
That
You
may
can't
can't
be
eat
the
eat salad
problem,
or berries.
no,
right?
no salad. So I've been doing my steamed vegetables in place of
Okay.
the salad.
Okay.
And I get my protein, like my soy. I do all the things, right? Beans, my quinoa. And And so I was like, we're going to take this test again because something's obviously wrong with the collection.
You said the collection.
She's writing a Google. She's at Google reviewing the lab. Like, don't go here.
Right.
Don't
Don't
trust
go
these.
here.
They
So
were
something
not.
is
They
wrong
did not
with
know
the
what they were
way
doing.
she drew the blood.
Right.
So we take it again, and my primary was like, I have no idea. Like, give up protein, give up carbs. I'm like, I'm not eating
You're
any
like,
of this stuff.
listen, I don't eat.
So I go to the OBGYN and I take this to her, and I'm like, what is going on? And she was like, do you lift weights? And I was like, no. And she was like, you don't do any strength training? And I was like, no.
Strength training. Oh God.
Like, I walk. Like, I do yoga. And she's like, when you enter the perimenopausal period, and I'm like, oh my God.
I'm in a
What?
spiral right now. I'm first.
She's like, your hormonal levels start to fluctuate and it can create insulin resistance,
Yeah.
which I had never heard of. And so I was like, I don't understand what any of this means. I'm not changing my diet. Like, I'm not doing anything different than what I'm doing. So she's like, add in some strength training, some heavy weights, like actually lift weights, and that might help. If it doesn't, then we need to talk about hormonal replacement therapy. And
Yeah.
I'm like, Perry, you heifer.
She came for your neck. She
Perry
was like, what?
This literally
Figured out. I had everything figured out.
You did have everything figured out. I will say this happened to my very dear friend who's a vegan. And all of a sudden she went in and her numbers, it was like 6.8 or 6 point something, which is like she was diabetic. And she was
Right.
like, this is not possible because I do yoga.
Right.
I do this. I'm like, but they literally, it was all centered around perimenopause.
Insulin resistance.
Yes.
Yeah. That's what I saw that new primary this week, and we were establishing care. So I was, she was asking things like, what are the types of things I want to come to her about? And I was like, random things that happen in life that trying to understand, is this something that is connected to hormonal changes, to perimenopause versus like I don't want to just, so my recent thing has been like histamine attacks. Like I get around my cycle in particular, like these crazy, my entire face like itches in very specific places 3 days before my cycle. And I started realizing it's like inflammation. It's histamine goes up because I'm having some like inflammation things. But it's like my blood work's fine. So you would never see it on my blood work. You would never, my levels are, but it's like, I'm telling you that this is happening for the past 4 times. I'm telling you that like on the 3rd day, every like 3rd or 4th cycle, I get a migraine that's like debilitating. Like, and I was so happy that I found someone. She's like that, like you've at this point, because research isn't there yet, you just have to find someone who's willing to kind of do this puzzle discovery work with you and know that you might not get a definite answer, but you might get directionally a place where you should start going until science cares about women.
Yeah,
Well,
I mean, and that's the thing is that like we are figuring it out on our own, and it's not like we just figured out what perimenopause is, right? Like we have to kind of piecemeal it. And once I started talking to my friends about it, they all had individual stories of the first symptom or the first sign or the thing that let them know. And this was my thing, was this. I mean, and I caught it in time that it's early enough that it's like right there on the, so they are good in letting me know before it goes over into the other issue. But it's like now I got, I'm adding all of these things in and we don't even know if it's going to work. Like it may not even work. She's like, we can try this. But I think to your point, it's nice to have someone that you can kind of work through all of those things with and say, could it be this? Could it be that? But it's interesting that the insulin resistance specifically mimics all of the things that we say are perimenopause. So like the insomnia, the night sweats, the belly fat, like all the things that we associate with perimenopause can be explained by this insulin resistance. And I'm like, this is nuts.
but they don't, but there's no, honestly, there really is no treatment, no thoughts,
Yeah.
no, like there, and no one's thinking about it ahead of time. No one's like, okay,
Yeah.
what age are you? You're about
No.
this. Let's start talking about
No.
how to help support you so you
Right.
can,
Because
right.
the only
No, no one's
things
doing
we learned from women before is like the only thing I knew about, I didn't even, obviously, I didn't know about perimenopause. I
No.
just knew
No, no.
when the people, women, older women in my life stopped having a period. Not when they spotted, not when they, it was like the date, what they had to share was like, here's the date I had my last period.
I don't
Right.
even
And
think
it's
I
like,
knew that. Nobody's talking about
I mean, no, I know that as an adult. I didn't know that as like a child.
Right.
So then it's just like, okay, I actually think I remember going to someone's house and like being maybe like teens and needing like a, tampon or a pad or something, and then being like, oh, I'm past that, past those ages. And I was like,
That was all you knew. And you were like, past that, how did you
past
pass?
it.
How did
What
you
do you
pass?
mean?
Right.
Right.
Nobody
That's
wrote a
it.
diagram.
But
Right.
it's funny looking back on those times now that you are where they were, because I think about all of the women in my family who I used to see plucking hairs. And at the time I was like younger and I was
What's
like, I
going
don't know.
on?
Yeah.
You're like, what
Right.
And now I'm like, every morning.
These are all the facts.
Got
These
my
are all.
clock session.
It's so sad. But it's so sad. This is just a reality. But this is the reality of what we have to deal with at this stage of our life. And how do you, and I think, it may not be a doctor that's telling you, it might just be your girlfriend in the community. Because I think, and you think about your family, your parents and aunts and so forth, they didn't have the social media advocates out there. They didn't
Right.
have social media in order to go, oh, I have
Right.
this. I'm having heart palpitations. Why do I feel like I'm having breathing issues? All of
Yeah.
that. No. It's menopause, lady.
Yes. And I think it's, I would like for us to also get to a place where we can view it the same way we viewed our teen years or those, younger years where we were transitioning into first getting a period, where it was maybe a little scary, like maybe we didn't have all the answers and we were figuring it out, but it wasn't this like negative
Mystery.
thing in quite the same way. I would like for there to be a little more acceptance in society of it so that it makes it easier for us to accept it within ourselves.
Right.
And not see it as this like terrible thing. But I'm saying that at this point where I'm at the beginning of it, because, if you talk to me like 2 years from now, I might be like, this is the worst thing that ever happened to me.
Listen, or 10 years, because for Black women, and that's what we don't talk about for Black women, peri and menopause is longer. So you could be in this stage for 10 years trying to figure out, sorry,
Right.
why, and not having the interventions or the doctor to tell you, because we don't all have access to the same.
Well, it's why preventative care is so important. This doctor said to me, she said, she's like, my oldest patient's 106 years old. And she's like, what I consistently see with patients who are living long, healthy lives are people who invested in preventative care early. People, and it is an investment. I think we've talked about the privilege of preventative care. Like, there's a privilege in being able to go to the doctor because you want to, because you want to understand more about your body, right? But there's it is an investment. It's a time investment. It's a money investment. But she was saying, she's like, it's nothing that is the indicator that I see consistently over people living long, healthy lives is people who've taken steps, like you were saying, Tamika, preventatively to really understand what's going on in your body and to understand your body.
And to take charge of it. So I have instituted what I call a Wellness Wednesday. And my Wellness Wednesday is the day that I see my therapist. It's the day that I do usually the hardest workout that I'm going to do that week. So if I'm going to walk on the trail, I do the most miles on that day.
Now it's about to be your weight Wednesday.
It's going to be I've already started. I've added in the weights.
The ankle weights.
Right.
All of it.
Yes. But I also do all of my medical, the bureaucracy. So like the phone calls, the appointments,
Right.
I
I hate
scheduling
that.
my mammogram, making sure I have my colonoscopy, and then I have, all of those things I try to do on that day, that it's going to be a day about my wellness. And I think having that built in each week makes sure that it makes sure that I am taking the time to pay attention to my health. Because we do this self-care, and self-care very often becomes a mani, a pedi, you go have brunch with your friend,
Right.
you might get a massage. But Wellness Wednesday is really about the medical and the health, and making
Yeah.
sure that I'm doing the things that I need to do. And I also, that was the other thing that really made me mad when I got these numbers, is that I had cut out alcohol.
You're like, I haven't been
You're
drinking
like,
or
you know what? Pour
sipping.
me a drink.
I
And
know
that's it.
that's the thing, is I was like, well, if I'm going to be doing
Might as well
all
sip.
this, I'm gonna add that wine back in. I don't care if
Right.
people.
Right. I thank you for putting a name for saying healthcare bureaucracy, because I think often too, part of the barriers to going to the doctor more is more of the work. I think for a lot of people, you go to an appointment once and you see that they coded it wrong, or, whatever, you paid to copay twice, whatever the thing is, all that extra stuff that comes with going to the doctor becomes barriers then for you wanting to do it again. You're like, see, what I don't have time for is all of this mess. And so the idea that you're carving that out as like part of your regular time is so important, because it is, you can't take on going to the doctor more often without thinking there's not our insurance system is trash in this country. And so every appointment, even if it feels basic, I've gone to basic mammograms where I'm like, I'm supposed to be get still a bill for $1,200, and you got to make time for that kind of stuff. Unfortunately,
It's time consuming and it's stressful.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I
And
watch,
do.
I
Yeah.
watch my mother doing it now. She's older, and I try to help where I can for her, but she has actually called me at times because she's so frustrated that something has taken like half the day to deal with. And so I'm not quite there yet where I have to do as much, but it's enough now that it needs its own day, I feel like.
I love it, actually. I love it. And I love how, we do talk about self-care, and it's usually a little bit more on a superficial. It's not
Yes.
diving deep into making sure that our cholesterol, all the long list, even mentioning the colonoscopy.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people are thinking, oh, I'll do that at some point. No, it's almost like a checklist for your health.
Yes, the colorectal cancers are impacting us at younger and younger ages,
Yeah.
and people need to get those as soon as the doctor first tells them that they need one.
Yeah.
And the colonoscopy itself, and I had told everyone this who was the same age as me, so I went back to like my college and my high school friends and was like, "This is the year, everyone. This is the if you haven't gotten it, schedule it." Because the colonoscopy itself, if they find the polyps, they remove it. And that is the prevention. And I'm like, why isn't everyone who is eligible to do this, why isn't everyone doing this?
Right. And eligibility should actually be 35 at this point when you
And
think about it,
honestly,
because I think I had my first colonoscopy around 35 to 40, and they remove polyps.
Yes.
And I have consistently had to go every 3 to 5 years, and they've removed polyps. So,
right. Well, the thing is too, so for a lot of routine screenings that have like these age limits, those go out the window if you have someone in your family who's had that, and then they usually go 10 years before the person's incidence. For so many of us whose family were not doing preventative care, it's very hard to track what actually was it that my grandmother, who was born in 1913, had. Like, I don't actually know. So I'm not telling you to lie, but I'm also telling you that you can, if you have a good doctor and they say, like, do you have this in your family? You know what? I don't know. I know that someone passed away, 2 people passed away of something that sounds like this, and get yourself in there earlier. Like, it's the earlier the better. And if you don't know your family history, which a lot of us don't, err on the side of, I don't know, but it probably was that, or it could have been that, particularly on the heart particularly on cardiovascular care and cancer. Like,
Yes.
absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
Agreed. That's
Because
really
Tamika,
people, we didn't, all of our grandmothers didn't like just, or great grandmothers didn't just pass because of sugar. Like, okay.
did you say sugar?
It's not just the sugars.
They
Okay.
had the sugar. They
Right.
had, but
Right.
maybe they had the sugar
Maybe
because
they
of
did
menopause,
because,
and they
right.
never got it checked.
Right.
right. Yeah.
Exactly.
That's
Yeah.
Exactly.
right.
Tamika, like I feel like I feel like we need to do a part two to, to tie back in to talk. Because I did say when you first came on camera, I said you have a gorgeous smile, and you said that there was a story behind that, and I
Yes, I'm glad
wanted
you
to
brought
just
that up
yeah.
because it's really something that I noticed about my kids when I had kids is that, and I think this is something that we lose individually as we get older. When you get kids together when they're young, like if you put them on a playground, they usually are going to go up to one another and figure out the thing that they have in common. So they may be vastly different, but if they have on the same shoes, they are going to say, "We have the same shoes. We're the same." And they're going to build a friendship off of that, and they're going to play and start to like each other and hang out all because of the shoes or the backpack or the shirt. It's usually not that they come together and they notice the differences, but I feel like as we get older, we come together and we start to see how we're different before we start to see how we are the same. And so people often tell me, "You have such a beautiful smile. Your smile is so pretty." And I appreciate that, and I do thank them for it. But I don't actually think that my smile is any prettier than anybody else's smile. I think what people are connecting to is that I smile so much and all the time at everyone, everywhere. And I smile at people before I speak to them, and I just give smiles like very liberally. Like I'm just kind of out there just smiling all the time. And I think that that's like my little child in me that still sees the commonality. And I think I just when I meet people, I just have that I almost bubble up inside, like, "Oh my God, who are you? We're the same. What are you?" Like that's who I am. And so I think that that's what the smile thing is. And I do appreciate it when people say it, but I think I smile at everyone all the time so much. And they're free and they make us all feel good and connected.
I
And so
love
that when
that.
you said that, I was like, "Oh, yes, this is what we need more of. We need to all be smiling at one another and finding out how we're the same."
No, I love that. I love that because, in some certain countries when I've traveled, there is sort of an automatic greeting that people greet each other and just kind of say hello. And several people have said I have that one of those faces that people want to engage. And
Yeah.
I'm like, I am like, why am I always smiling or trying to like engage somebody? But I think there is a warmth there, and it's something that in some ways in this society right now, I don't think we really connect with each other in that same way.
We also are always rushed.
Yeah.
And because we're always rushed and we have this like productivity lifestyle, we always have to be productive and we never rest and
Mhm.
we never give ourselves a break and we're always grinding, that we forget to smile at one another and we forget to be warm because we're the pressure, the time, the clock, all of those things, it makes us a little bit harsher. And so I think that even when I'm out, like if I'm just at a store and I go up to someone at the store, like I'm not going to just go up to them and start talking. I'm not going to say, "Hey, do you have this on aisle such as?" I'm going to smile at them first. Like it's just to me, it just seems like a basic thing. But people, and we've gotten to the point that people are actually suspicious of folks who smile at them.
Yeah. I was gonna say, I do feel like it. Okay, I feel like very geographically in the United States, like a smile gives off very different things. Like I definitely feel like in New York, I was not just like randomly smiling at people and just like seeing what it would like generate. And I think, but when I was recently in the South, I do feel like I was like, I felt like I was on like smiling at everybody. And there was this very different, I think California, depending on where you are in California, is probably, could go either way. I think where I live, I'm like, I'm being careful of how I hand. I'm not like you to me. I'm being very cautious of the smiles I'm handing out because I want to make sure I'm not handing them out to the wrong people, but getting the attention that I don't want. But I think you're right that it's like, we've lost this ability to connect with people, and sometimes you actually don't want to have a conversation with people. There's people you don't want to have a conversation with, but there's absolutely people you could smile at. You know what I mean? Like, and sometimes
Yeah.
that actually gets
Mhm.
you out of
That's a
the
good point.
conversation and like the dialogue that you're like, I know this wouldn't go in a good way, so I'm gonna give you a smile. I'm gonna keep it pushing.
That's exactly it. And
Right.
you have to be cautious because you can't get on the subway or you can't walk down the street smiling at
Right.
everyone. But
Right.
if you
Yeah.
walk into the bodega and you're going in to buy something, you can
Right.
smile at the people who
Right.
work at the bodega, right?
Right.
And so I think yes, very much so. When I am on an airplane, it's a little tricky because you may not
Oh,
want to have a conversation with the person who's coming to sit down next to you. So
yeah, girl.
smile, put your
No.
headphones on.
Mask. I'll smile under the mask. Eye mask plus
Right.
headphones. I'm not
Right,
trying.
right, right.
No. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm absolutely fine with someone being like, "Oh, she was unapproachable." You're right.
Yeah.
Actually,
I know.
But see,
in an
because I
in an
wear my
airport,
mask,
yeah,
and so you can smile with your
You can smile with
eyes.
your eyes
you can
and
Yeah.
smile.
smize. You can
Yeah.
smize.
Yes.
So you talked a little bit. I think so much of an important part of like the work you do and the things you talk about, Tamika, as a mom. You talked about having two kids, and a mother to a young daughter and a son. Can you talk about just, I think, a little bit that smile thing? We kind of you often hear people say to a little girl, "You should smile." I used to get that. You should smile more, and it's like, first of all, don't tell me we could go down that path of like, don't tell me what to do. Like, you don't say that to little boys. But can you just talk about, I think, as a parent, like how in today you parent your daughter differently than you parent your son, as having two Black kids in today's beautiful 250-year-old America?
Um, so with raising Black children, what I have to constantly balance is giving them information about the reality without also breaking their spirit.
Mm.
But I also want to parent them differently than I was parented, in the sense that I am not trying to make them any one way or the other. I'm not trying to mold them into anything. And so I very much allow them to be who they are. My daughter does not smile. She's 15. And my smile actually annoys her a lot of the time. And my bubbliness, actually, like in the morning especially, I'll be like, "Good morning, my precious." And she's like, "Okay, that's too much. We're gonna have to," she's her own person and she has a very different personality. And I allow her to be who she is and to show up the way that she shows up, without criticism and without trying to make her into someone else. And I have never told her to smile, even in photos. I have a thing about that with pictures, specifically because I was photographed from such a young age. We didn't talk about this, but I started off modeling, acting, and doing pageants from the age of 4. And I was very much trained to smile from a young age. And it worked because that's my personality. But there was definitely a pushback internally to having to smile on cue. And that's what happens when you are in front of a camera a lot when you're young. And so in photographs from my children, I've never been like, "Oh, be in a better mood for me, be in a better mood for this picture, smile for me, smile for this picture." And I never wanted my children to feel like they're performing for me or that they have to show up a certain way for me. For boys, it's different than it is for girls, because girls are allowed to express emotion and to be emotionally connected. Boys are not. And it was really important for me to raise my boy to be socially, emotionally intelligent and to cry. And I wanted both of them to know what it was to be embraced when they cry. So often when our children cry, you even hear parents say, well, that's what you get. Or, why were you over there? That's why you fell. And there is a lesson in a lot of what they do because they are kind of ridiculous when they're young, but you also need to embrace them and say to them, I'm sorry. I know that hurt. That looked like it hurt. How does that feel? Come here. I'm here to comfort you and hold you, for my boy and for my girl. But for Black children, there's so much of teaching them a perspective that is not their own and how they are perceived. And that's the hard part. That's the balance, because I'm teaching them to be who they are, but I'm also teaching them to understand how they are perceived by
Right.
others.
Right. In showing up your authentic self, like this is what it's going to bring.
Yes.
But I don't want you to not do that, but also want you to, that is a challenge. Yeah, I
That's
can imagine.
hard. And
Yeah,
it's my work. I have never wanted my children to enter kindergarten and not know some stuff and
right.
not be, I've never expected for white teachers, and it's predominantly white teachers at the schools that they've been at, to teach them the things. So I taught both of them to read before kindergarten, my daughter at 3, my son at 4. I started to teach them about race in America and racism before they enter kindergarten, because the things that they would encounter in predominantly white spaces happens way earlier than what you would ever expect.
Right.
And so it's painful to have those conversations. I remember reading John Lewis's March to my daughter when she was probably in kindergarten, and I was reading the part in the book where the children are being hosed and the dogs are coming to attack them, and I started sobbing as I was reading this to her, and she was like, Mommy, why are you crying? And I was crying not only because of what had happened to the children, but because I was, to a certain extent, destroying her innocence in the process. And I hated having to do that because I really just wanted her to focus on Doc McStuffins.
Right.
I didn't want her to have to hear the story about the kids that were hosed and the dogs were put on them.
Right.
And that changed something in her, but it also made her the same little girl who went into 2nd grade and was like, I'm not going to pledge allegiance to the flag. I'm going to sit down while you guys do this. I'm going to sit this out every day.
I love that.
I love her.
I love her. Gosh, I remember when, yes, obviously before she was born. And so I think it was so funny when I saw her, what you're saying, how your personality is being so different. When I saw her at your book reading, she was taking pictures of you, and she was taking pictures of you. And like, I think I sent something to you after, and you were like, she like did a good job or whatever. She was like happy about doing it, but it was like there was so much pride. I could see pride in her taking the pictures of you, and your husband kept like looking over, like, get this one, and she was like, I've already done it. It's done. I've captured it. I got her. Like, don't worry about it. Like, just so matter of fact, so different than you. But was so, I could see that like pride in her. It was super sweet.
It's been a healing journey to have a daughter who is growing up the entire time with her own agency and in touch with herself and never feeling like she has to apologize for any part of herself to me. And that's not to cast aspersions on my mother or my grandmother, because they were raised in very different conditions than what I was raised in and what I'm raising my daughter in. And there was a lot of trauma around that, and they were surviving. But it is healing to see my daughter thrive from the beginning.
Yeah.
And to know the reality, but to still have her own power and agency within it. And social media, now that she's on it and she's got her phone, and that's a whole thing. Social media is an impact, a very negative impact on self-esteem for young girls. But I think we waited long enough that by the time she encountered it, she kind of already knew who she was and what she stood for and what was important to her. And so she can look at it and kind of still be apart from it. And I think if I hadn't have raised her to feel good about who she was, that wouldn't have happened when she got there.
Yeah. Tamika, you have Listen, I literally think we can do a whole series with you. There's a lot there.
Whole
And
series.
I loving all of it. But, we've been talking, Jessica and I, a lot about women in their full. You have a great career, writing, your creative spirit, your mother, you're traveling and talking about your work. When you're thinking, what advice for women who are trying to get there and trying to be there, what advice do you have for them?
Advice to what, like having it all, having the
Yeah, yeah.
you can't do it all at the same time, first of all. And second of all, this is why I go back to the health thing. The most important thing, the foundational thing is the health.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't do any of the other stuff without the health. And I think we put that as our last thing, and we focus on career and husband and children and parents that, the senior parents that we're taking care of, and community and our friendships. And then we put our health on the back burner. What the most important thing for me is sleep.
God, that's
I have
like,
these rest cards. Did I tell you guys about the rest cards? I'm like,
no, what at the rest card? Listen, you need to write a blog because I need to join it because I need help. Or maybe I need to call you because I need help.
the
My rest
rest is like a rest revolution, but it's this idea that we were given that we have to earn our rest. And we all feel guilty about resting. And we
Right.
do this to ourselves because we have to be productive. Everything we do, even our
Yeah.
vacations, we have to do all the things when we go on vacation, and we have to accomplish all of these things. And so we don't nap. We don't sleep in. We
Right.
feel guilty about resting. I had a sinus infection this summer, and I went into the doctor and she had to give me antibiotics because it was that bad. And she was like, you need to go on bed rest. And I was like, now, when you say bed rest, what do you mean exactly? And she was like, get into bed and don't get out until you feel better. And I had to take a moment to go back to my rest cards that have these sayings on there about the fact that rest is our birthright.
Mm.
We don't have to earn it. It is
Mhm.
part of the resistance for us to rest. Sleep is important. Daydreaming is important. Having moments to ourselves. And this is why I think this self-care thing has kind of gotten us off track. Because I think people have different ideas about what self-care is, and then, you go out and you do the mani-pedi, and then you go do the other thing, but then you haven't slept. You're working off of like 4 hours of sleep. And
Okay,
so I think,
I'm taking this personal right now. So I
right?
mean,
Because we all at some point have done this to ourselves, and it's like we wear it as a badge of honor. I only slept 4 hours. I only slept 5 hours. I'm making it happen. I'm grinding. I
Look,
got
this
my
is guys where we differ because I do not. I'm like, I need my 8 plus plus
yes.
plus
8, I don't
plus.
even know. 8 is when I have a cold, probably. So yeah. Anyway.
That's what I mean, and that's the norm. And to be honest with you, that is my husband. My father was like that. My father grew up on a farm. His family
Oh
owned the
yes.
land. They were not sharecroppers. They
Yeah.
owned the land. And he got up when the roosters got up. And he was a workaholic, and he worked himself to death. And I have married that same person. I have married someone who cares about work and labor.
I'm sure you never tell him that though.
No, he knows that
No,
because
obviously.
he knows he needs the rest. He just won't do it.
We'll
Right.
send him the clip.
I feel like he is like everyone else, where it's just constant like travel. He travels a lot, and he comes in like last night. His flight was delayed, so he didn't get home until like 1:30 in the morning, flying in from Chicago. I think he was in Chicago, and it's just a different city every other week, and
Right.
he's tired. We're all tired.
Right.
And so when my advice, I don't have, it's not these platitudes or these wonderful things it is
Rest.
health,
Get
sleep,
Right.
rest. It will solve all the other problems.
Maybe
I love
will.
that. I love that. And I don't know how I think, yes, you need to, because girl, you got a lot going on, and you have even more coming. And we'll share on socials and everything. Links to your book, the current book out, which everyone, if you're not a scaredy cat like me, well, everyone should buy it. But then if you're not a scaredy cat like me, you should actually read it or buy it and then gift it to a scaredy cat.
Yes.
But thank you for coming. As always, you teach me something different every time I talk to you, and it's like putting a piece together. Every time you say something, I'm like, oh, that is so who she is. Like, and I never would have thought that, but then I don't know how to explain it. But you are who you are. You have been for 20 years. I love you dearly, and thank you for coming on. It's so
thank
special
you
to have
so
you here.
much. Thank you
Yeah.
so much for having. This was like therapy. This was
Yeah.
so
Good. Wait, girl, call us. Call us. Like, listen. Thank you to our listeners. Like, subscribe, and listen.
Like, subscribe. Hey, it's Jessica. Thanks for listening to Girl Call Me. If you have something to add or a story to share, come on over to Instagram or Facebook and join the conversation. Also, make sure you follow and subscribe Girl Call Me. You don't want to miss when we release new episodes. Thanks for listening.